One, I am Justin. I went on a major side quest with Marriott in 2024, resulting in this talk. I originally gave it at Bsides Prague in March 2024, then RVASEC where it was recorded, and then last August for Bsides Vegas as a DEF CON Sky Talk. It's a crazy story to this day. It's hard to believe all the events that unfolded. The long and short of it is I was able to exploit Marriott system to help this homeless guy, Earl Jones, get a job while in the hotel and become a homeowner in 292 days. And so this is the story, soup to nuts. I hate that saying, but it's funny, of how this happened and what the purpose of this whole thing was. It started out as a mere interest in hotel security and ended up as a sociological experiment that could pave the way to real meaningful change in society. Whoops, am I in here? So this all started in a pretty bleak situation. It was February 28th, 2023. I got stuck in a hotel elevator for 6 hours and 18 minutes. Nobody came. I'm at the hotel. I'm with EMS. Where are you at? I'm in College Park, Maryland. The place is literally called the hotel. Which hotel? The hotel. There's no service. The hotel staff thought that the maintenance window was going off, which is why the elevator was there. I could have died. It caused in me, it was so traumatic that it left an indelible mark with me. When I got out of the elevator, the hotel was so embarrassed that they couldn't take accountability. They actually kicked me out and claimed that I was stealing from the gift shop. And it wasn't until the following week when EMS reviewed the footage and they said, this is like the most terrible blunder we've seen in our history of our fire department. We think that you should sue them for multi-million dollars. I said, no, I believe in taking the high road. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but over a period, it kind of crystallized in my mind what I wanted to do. And then just as some of these videos are embedded that they don't work, but I have a whole playlist after for people to watch. The funny thing is, so then I got stuck. I ended up in Washington, D.C., here, there, and everywhere. I go back to get my stuff because I'm kicked out at this point to room 911, irony. And at 8:27 p.m., I got stuck again for 57 minutes. And then when law enforcement finally did show up for the day, it was 14 hours and 10 minutes. If you look at your SLA, that's terrible. That's like 5 9s or 9 5s or whatever. But it's, it's unreal. And it definitely changed me that day. Yeah, Die Hard, John McClane. I may have had a bad one, but I had one that was 1,000 times worse, let me tell you. So what is the high road? Originally, I'm just looking at these hotels, and I've always had an interest in being a hooligan, but most importantly, I think it's 2026 and nobody should be homeless. And when I went to this hotel, the hotel at University of Maryland, I was talking to the guy at the front desk, Jamal, and I was like, hey man, what's the occupancy ratio, etc.? He's like, well, there's 464 rooms here. On average, 78 are vacant per month or per night. And I'm like, okay, so if you look at the fire code, that's 4 people per room. That's literally 350 people. There's 280 homeless people in College Park. You can solve that problem. He's like, I wish it was that easy, my man. And I'm like, actually, I think it is. And so I just decided I'm going to barrel through this. And I went and I got obsessed with hotels. Wait, let me go back. So yeah, so March 14th, it's a very cold day here in Richmond. And I was kind of sick of the situation. I had also, for the record, I had to go to the hospital. I was in an extreme manic episode, and I get out on literally the 14th. And I go down and I see people there, and I was like, screw it. I'm going to do something about it. I go and I book 4 different rooms at the Richmond Marriott right across the street from where I live. I cloned, I believe, 37 key cards, and I give them to these homeless people. And it's a scene out of a movie. My friend Cassandra, who worked at the Starbucks, didn't know me at the time. She's like, wow, I remember that day. That shit went down. People are converging into the hotel. I eventually walk in probably an hour later after everyone's there, and I'm escorted by the manager to room 256. In that room is Marriott security, 2 police officers. The officers were actually super interested. They're like, wow, that's really cool. How did you clone it? It's basic My Fair classic card. But the head of security is like, well, we care about homelessness, but we can't do it. And I was like, no, you fucking don't. You don't care. I just stormed out and I said, boom. It was obvious to me that the buckshot approach did not work. So I needed to refine my strategy.
Hey, can I jump in here real quick, Justin?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, my name is Don. I've been working with Justin on some of this stuff for some time. Right at that part of the story is probably where I got introduced to a lot of this stuff with him. We had been friends prior to this, and I had heard about the elevator incident that he had went through, and I know he said, he was going to make it right in some form or fashion. I don't think either of us really understood what that was at the time, but I do remember around that time with this key card incident of getting a call. I got a call from Justin, and he was mentioning some, the homeless people outside, how cold it was. He's like, I think I'm going to book some rooms, In my head, I was like, all right, maybe he's just going to like buy a bunch of hotel rooms for some of these people. And what ended up with that meaning, he didn't mention he was going to be cloning key cards for all the homeless people that were going to be outside, which I thought in the end turned out to be really interesting. It really piqued my interest in this and kind of helped me go forward with them as well. But yeah, by the time I really understood the full scope of what is happening, the hotel security was already involved. And in my experience and working with Justin, it's kind of how it goes. You'll get this, and then you'll get the full kind of story later on with what it really was. But I just wanted to throw that fact in there.
Yeah, it's a bit nutty, but buckshot, yeah, did not work. Needless to say, and Don kind of tested that. Yeah. So, and I already went through this, but I take a page out of my dad, Jay Bird. He's quite a character, and after this, I told him about it, and I knew he'd be proud. He's like, he used to say this thing like, I put my pants on the same way they do, one leg at a time, kiss my black ass. Anyway, he really inspired me, this sort of anti-authoritarian streak. And for me, it's like, if you can do something, you have to, and I've always had a problem with authority. So for me, physical security, offensive security, hacking is like the perfect avenue for me to just channel my energy and actually affect change. And then so after that, I got obsessed with hotels, right? For the next like 7 months, there's only one Marriott or hotel in College Park I was still allowed into. It was a Richmond Marriott, right? So that was kind of my target because I still had business in College Park. I was working at this quantum computing company, and I really liked the town, and I had unfinished business. So, and it's a interesting hotel in that it's like a 4-star hotel, but it's only got 5 levels. There's 2 different sides, 286 rooms, but there's really no security. And because it's a college town hotel, and when I say no security, there's like no key cards to get in. You can go into sideways, and for me, I'm like, this is a great POC. I'm just gonna like run through it, and I'm just gonna sample it. Well, I ended up meeting the head of the manager, this guy Jay. I'm gonna keep him sort of anonymous. Just I told people DEF CON the deal, but just keep it on Marriott. But I asked him, I was like, hey Jay, like, have you ever done any assessments here? Have you seen if there have been people living in this hotel for like maybe days, weeks, months, and for free? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'll tell you what. Go to this restaurant across this, like really across the way on building 2. I'm gonna like make a video for 20 minutes, and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. And so I actually just did this yesterday too. I went to the 5th floor. I start talking to a maid. I pretend that I like left and I needed to get in because my laptop was in there. Talked to her about, sure, sweet, no problem. She like puts her key card up, and I was pretending to use my Proxmark 3 as like my mobile phone, and she has a skeleton key. So when I'm holding it up, it looks like I'm testing my mobile phone, but I'm actually copying her key. So I go in, I get into the room. There's no laptop. Oh, so sorry, ma'am. Whatever. I go down to the 4th floor, which is the presidential suite, and I'm taking video, and I'm doing a 4x4 just to show that I have access to every room. And I go up to the 5th floor. It takes me 11 minutes, 37 seconds to completely sweep that building. I go meet Jay across the street. I show him the video. He was stunned. I think he said something like, oh my shit. He like could not oh, somebody's asking something. Wait, was that a raised hand?
What? Oh yeah, that was, whenever you get a second, that was me. I had something I wanted to put on there.
Oh, okay, cool. And then that was that. So go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I think the only thing I really want to add to this is, in the beginning of this, I think, he saw an opportunity, going back to like cloning key cards and all that, saw an opportunity for, something else to get done. And around this time when we started talking, this is kind of when it went from like the beginning of something that was kind of chaotic, right? Like having all those homeless people like kind of storm on a Marriott, like in a way it was doing a public service. And I think we could all, get behind it's a public good. But this is where it started to shift, to working with some kind of Marriott management to something where it was a little more methodical, right? You really started treating this like a red team engagement where things were going to be documented. This is how it was going to go. We're going to look at this, and this. And it was really something that was just awesome to be a part of. And yeah, I talked about, doing some of these walkthroughs with hotel security. And I've been a part of plenty of these walkthroughs with him. And a lot of these start, initial access getting in through basically just a hotel lobby, right? Most of the people there are just going to assume you're a guest. So while you're in this lobby, I mean, you can start looking at all kinds of things in the lobby, right? One of us could be distracting somebody at the front desk and look at different things that were, see if, what's happening on shift change. How are the maids coming in? What floors are they doing? What floors are they cleaning so we can have this kind of access later? Even, noticing things like sometimes doors might get propped open on shift change. A lot of this stuff you can see right from that standpoint. And it's really interesting when you start doing it. And the other cool thing is I've seen him do where he talked about the maid situation. It happens so fast. It's like, all of a sudden these maids go in under 5 minutes. All of a sudden I'm in the room. Like it is like, it's really just impressive. It's really just impressive to watch. It really just takes a little bit of confidence going through. He talked about the thing with the Proxmark. And it really opens your eyes to see how hotel security is and what kind of change we could possibly make in that. So go ahead, Justin. I mean to interrupt you there.
That was good context. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, like I said, I just did a run through yesterday and it took me 57 seconds to get in the room. Anyway, at a certain point, you're like, wow. And the reason I've been targeting hotels, they are highly resourced and poorly secured, and they hold the key to solving a lot of problems around homelessness, addressing a lot of levels of insecurity. It's not just housing, it's food, it's internet, it's laundry, it's etc. I'll get more to that here, but hotels hold the key to solving all these problems. Oops, shoot. So yeah, as Don alluded to, I started to structure this whole thing as a red team campaign. I'm like, I'm gonna go red man with the method man, and I'm gonna design this in a way that, and with the support of an executive sponsor. So Jay is the manager of Marriott. He gets me hooked into this POC where I pilot going through other Marriotts. He's like, I want you to do 10 hotels. This is November 2023, and kind of just demonstrate it because like I have a very powerful friend, sounds like Batman, who would be really interested in this work. And so I start designing this and going through the phases, right? And so red team campaign, recon, as Don said, you can passively observe and learn so much about an environment without ever touching the network. You can understand where the cameras are, when people come and go. You get into the lobby, even the Wi-Fi, if it's unsecured. If there's key cards, how many floors are there? All that stuff. You can walk through and do that as a guest. Like, the thing with hotels is like you can't just be turning them into Fort Knox because you have paid people there that need to enjoy it. So it's kind of a balancing act, right? And you learn a lot of interesting things, like pretty much no hotel has cameras in the stairwell. Like the only ones that do are like the Venetian, the Bellagio, and like really expensive 5-star hotels. And also another interesting trend that I'll cover more is as the prestige of the hotel goes up, the security goes down. And a lot of that has to do with the presumption that if you have money, you're trusted, but then they meet someone like me and they're completely split upside down. So yeah, phases of a general red team campaign that you design. You got your recon, you learn tons during that. And then once you've got initial access, that's inverse order, you can then enumerate, right? So once you're in there, you can start to really like establish your beachhead. Because once you get in the hotel too, and you've piggybacked in, you've now used stolen credentials, right? You're essentially using that person's access. So you can get on the Wi-Fi, you can build stuff to the room, you can do all of that stuff. Like as this, you're impersonating this, you're doing a typical, just impersonation attack. And then once you're in there, you can get more free rooms. And the other interesting thing about this is you can go straight up like rogue and do this without any legitimate room. But the way that I did it was I had a hybrid model where I had a legitimate room booked, but I also was taking over other rooms, So like I was a guest, and that's kind of what allows you to have some sort of credence to give you an actual key card. Like a lot of things, like there's a combination of legitimate and illegitimate access. And then yeah, you can do privilege escalation. There's a nice little trick that I was covering in a video on the place like a month ago, called the 2-for-1 special. And so what happens is you go and you book a hotel and you tell them like, hey, this hotel I'm not feeling it, whatever, I need a different room. 9 times out of 10, they'll give you a key card for the other room without revoking the other one. And a lot of times that room will be valid until the next day. So you get a 2-for-1 special, right? And then there's also like a lot of like, all right, so living off the land, right? How do you stay there? Once you have access, you can go to the M Lounge. This is what the homeless guy did, Earl. He was able to eat at the M Club, drink, be merry. And then persistence is really key here, because if you've gotten illegitimately, and even if you haven't, once they revoke your key cards, rather than going through the process of initial access, you want to be able to get the back door in. There's a lot of tricks there, like the pen trick. The wedge trick is my favorite. You use the little sign that says "Do not disturb" and you shove it right between where it's supposed to lock up the door. It looks like it's closed, but boom. And if it's after the shift in the day when you're supposed to have checked out, they will not check until the next day, like literally. And so you can just stay there, and like you don't need a legitimate card, or if somebody else is in the room, they'll let you in. But like this is how easy this is. So yeah, like I said, sort of the recon phase. Passive intelligence. It's the equivalent of OSINT. You can figure out everyone in the company. Anthony Capiano's the CEO. Jay Galindo, he's now the director of corporate security. Talk to the staff, understand the floor plans of the buildings. You can get those online, so you can just walk through. I use a GoPro, which is awesome. You can even map the floors with different technology. Like it sounds like it's futuristic, like Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, but you can actually like use that thermoscopic imaging to do that if you really want to go hardcore. Figure out where the security office is, etc. And then once you're in there, yeah, like once you're in your room, then use it as an opportunity to be less conspicuous, right? Because if you can pivot off of that, it's similar to OSINT, but like I said, it's like the equivalent of OSINT versus Nmap scanning, right? So you might go with a key card and you might start running like to room and seeing if this works. And so you're going to be more on the active side. That's where enumeration comes in. These are inverted. I have to flip the slides actually. So you get initial access and then you enumerate. And a lot of times for initial access, it's like I said, it's the maids. It's either getting the maids to let you in, finding a key card. People leave key cards on all the time. Like I managed to get one off of a cleaning cart from a maid that led me to the JW Marriott that I'll talk about in a few slides. And then there's other really interesting features with the app where like you can book a room, and there are a lot of cases where they're going to issue a room and not even charge if you use a virtual payment method. So like if you use Capital One or whatever, places will issue you and let you check in, and some of them will give you a room, and then you can request a mobile key, especially if you snuck in. Because then you can say, oh, I'm in this room as this person. I need you to retroactively issue a key, right? And it works. It's kind of, you work backwards. And then there's a lot of vulnerabilities in not only Marriott Bonvoy, but the Hilton Honors, where you can book a room for 33 days and then it completely falls out of registration. Why? 33 is the magic number, right? Then lateral movement. Once you're in that room, get more rooms. I had this wild thought back when that was happening that I'll probably dial back on, but like, what about this idea that you book a room on a floor and you just slowly start to take over adjacent rooms? The next thing you know, you just start launching in your friends, your family, the homeless people, the strippers, and you've taken over the hotel. It wouldn't take that long. Honestly, it would probably take a couple days. And you have established hotel dominance at that point. Do with it what you will. That may or may not still happen. End of the damn dungeon. Yeah. And then live off the land. Like I said, literally, there's so many resources. If you're in the M Club Lounge, which is either through platinum membership or, like I said, you can steal it or convince the front desk to give it to you. You'll get breakfast, lunch, dinner, 3 hots and a cut, as Jay Bird would say, for these places, and also access to the lounge. Like you don't even need to stay in a room. That's the thing. Like, cause these lounge common areas have so much stuff, and they're only at the 4 and 5 stars. So like the Ritz-Carlton, the Sheraton, the Renaissance, St. Regis, the original Marriott brands, and they're great. You know, like it's an extremely valuable benefit that allows you to address food insecurity, etc. Persistence, like I said, 90% success is 9%, masturbation 10%, in imagination. Anyway, make sure that you can still get access to the rooms of your choice. Skeleton key is the way to go. The skeleton key is notorious because it gets you in every room. And one of the issues is that I've talked to Marriott extensively about that they don't really fix is the maids or the managers or whoever, when they get access, they have persistent like admin access, right? It's essentially like, okay, we're gonna give someone root AWS credentials just to use. What should be used is just-in-time privilege access management. When the maids come in, they authenticate their key card. When they leave, they de-authenticate. That just doesn't happen. You know, you get this key card and you're in the system. There's a lot of issues with that. There's a lot of most hotels do not log properly. They do not provide any sense of real-time alerting. It's all reactive. So they might have security cameras, but there's no way in hell they're going to be able to correlate stuff in real time and figure out that someone like me in the hotel is doing this thing until well after the fact. So, but skeleton key is easy, but like I said, once you're in a room, there's many ways. You know, you could straight up just prop it, but you want to make it look like no one's in there. And so the pen trick is a technique from Freaky Clown. He wrote the book, I Rob Banks, or How I Rob Banks, and you put it in the wedge of the door and you smash it, and the pen barely keeps the door open, but it's there, but it still gives you access in. But like I said, the wedge trick is another one where you put the little door stopper in and it closes. It looks like it closes, and then next thing you know, boom, you kick it open. You can also just have somebody else stay in the room, right? You know, they'll let you in, whatever, because then they can stay in the room and they can close it off and like, you know, and put up the security bolt and everything. And so most times they're just gonna leave the room, because here's the funny thing about hotels, right? If you leave your stuff in the room, right, they deactivate your card. They don't care beyond that. Like if you're in the room or whatever, you can get your stuff out. They're trying to lock you out of your room so that you pay for your stuff. They're holding it hostage. But if you're already in the room and whatever, and if they can't charge you, like they're assuming they can just charge a payment method, but they're holding your whole stuff hostage. So here's another little trick too. I call it the 11 p.m. checkout. If you want to stay in a room without paying, you book another reservation, again with a virtual card, and you just say, I'm going to book it the same night. You check in early. The staff that come by to try to clean out the room around 12, oh, are you staying for another night? Yes, I am. They're not going to figure out until accounting at night that you actually haven't paid. So that's, your key will get deactivated, but you'll have persistent access. 11 p.m. checkout. I have a whole series of videos on the playlist you can watch to see this in action. And then what really matters a lot to Marriott, to the client, to Hilton, whatever, is the actual reporting, right? And the data, like seeing is believing. So I walk around with a GoPro. I'm constantly talking and capturing it, and every little detail I see, observations. You know, you need to be able to capture this. Seeing is believing. You know, I wish I could make this stuff up, but then you see it on video. It's like I've done crazy stuff. I was at the Ritz-Carlton in DC in June, and there was a lot of notice about being on guard for homeless people that were sleeping in the stairwell, because guess what? There's no security key cards on either side. And it wasn't for me. I just happened to be doing this job. And so the maids were a little more defensive as far as like the person trying to come up. However, I'm like, hey, let's look at psychology. Is anyone going to stop a fireman or someone with a fire extinguisher? So I grabbed one out of the rental truck I had, and I grabbed it. I went to the top floor and I ran to the presidential suite. This room is like, it was pristine, not anymore, but it was 177 years old. The host of royalty, like Macron, Angela Merkel. I'm running at the maid. She like opens the door up. I destroy it like with the fire extinguisher. And I sent the footage to the person who hired me, and at that point I thought I would be fired, and he just said, well, that's really cool, kid, keep it going. So at that point I knew that I was there at Marriott forever. Like we had an understanding that he could never actually get rid of me because I'd have permanent backdoor access. So yeah, you gotta get creative, and you gotta get crazy, and something will work, right? Humans are infinitely fallible and able to be manipulated. And then yeah, like to educate and remediate. So part of the follow-up for what I do is returning to these hotels to retest, or providing them a comprehensive list of like solutions. And a lot of it is similar to like actual cyber solutions, where it's fundamental, like defense in depth. So, have better logging, de-authenticate the people when they come in, actually have key cards, use something that's running on like Desfire. So a lot of the MyFair Classic cards, they if there isn't even a key card in the reader in the elevator, it'll just, you use it, it goes to the floor. Desfire is a newer technology where it's access controlled to the floor you're on, which is great. And it also kind of is used in the way that the rooms are keyed, in that you can only have like 2 active keys. So if you just go down and you request a new one from the lobby, they'll deactivate the one you have. So that makes it so you can't infinitely clone keys, right? And that makes sense. But a lot of these hotels just don't do it. They use MyFair, 4K1B cards. They don't use Ultralight C or EV1 or any of that stuff. So they easily clone. And the thing is, physical security is very hard. And Marriott and hotels are essentially physical devices like running with digital security controls. Other than locks, if you think about it, like cameras are digital, access control is digital. And if you get physical access to a digital system, you can undermine all the controls, which is why it's very hard. And there's a funny, there's like an excerpt in the Snowden book about NSA, and he says the only way to do physical security in NSA, they talk about, is barbed wire, Faraday, and guard. Right? It's like, okay, you need someone to shoot guns, you need barbed wire, and you need to kill actual like RFID. Otherwise, security is really hard. So. And then, so I went on a rampage. I hit 807 hotels in 2024. I didn't stay at all of them. These are just ones I did. And like I mentioned, there's a whole video of these and why the prestige up and the security down is an interesting correlation. And a lot of it, like I said, has to do with just the assumption that if you're a wealthy guest that you're of privilege, that you're not a threat. I don't really know, but it kind of plays into the psychology of how we perceive people. The best security I've seen have been at like the 3-star Residence Inns and the Element and stuff, which, by the way, those are my favorite brands. I'm not a fan of Ritz-Carlton and all these like elitist hotels. They're just not my thing. And I mean, they're fun to hit for sure, because like I said, the security is non-existent. But as far as like the value, the quality experience, not interesting to me. So at this point, it's like, did I really have a plan amidst all this? Not really, but it kind of came together in the ways that I hoped it would. And so a lot of, like I had mentioned, my thought around this was housing and hotels can deal with a lot of different types of insecurity, food, like you need telecommunications access, you get print, you get an address, right? This is what's really helpful. So for this guy, Earl Jones, in order for him to qualify for Medicaid and other services, you need an address. Use the hotel. I end up just shipping stuff to hotels a lot of times. I like whatever, and you can also use it to store stuff. I use the hotels as my personal dumping ground, because one little fun trick is you can go to a hotel even without a reservation. You go to the concierge, they'll store your stuff. So if you're traveling for the day in the city, you don't need to pay for lockers. You just leave it there indefinitely. So like, again, there's resources galore. And anyway, so I'm thinking about this whole thing, and this is a little out of order, sorry. Okay, so then to continue on all of this, as the journey continued with housing, I started hitting highfalutin hotels, and then Jay puts me up in. He's like, I want to hit the JW Marriott. This is hotel number 10 on the POC. There's a G17 political summit. I guarantee that if you can get some footage here, I'll be able to send it to my main man, who's very highly esteemed in Marriott, and we're going to get some action. And so JW Marriott's right across from the White House. It's a 5-star hotel, piss poor security. You go in, there's a really funny elevator system. There's 15 floors. You go to the elevator, you say, I want to go to 15. Go to elevator B. So they make it even easier. They just queue you up to the right place. And the key cards are MyFair 14B, shitty, easily cloned. And so I'm like doing analysis. He's like, but beyond just getting in the room, here's what I want you to do. He's like, I'm going to give you the manifest of all the people that are staying there for this convention. Go ahead and go in each of the rooms, show the world what it would look like if you actually wanted to kill them. Like, I'm one dude, right? Imagine I'm rolling in deep with Ocean's 8 layers of babes, or I'm a nation state. Like, how isn't this happening already? I mean, it is. It's just you don't hear about it. Like, all right, I'm one dude. Trust me, Russian FSB is on top of this stuff. And so I simulate this experience. I end up walking in on two very important people, which I'm not going to cover for this in public, but needless to say, I could have killed them both. They were well esteemed, like, world diplomats, and that was it. That was enough for the boss man to get the footage, immediately call me and say, "How do we fix this?" I said, "Well, you can't really fix this because Marriott has 9,009 properties. They only manage 48. They used to be in the business of real estate. Now they're in the business of hospitality. So all these hotels are actually managed individually as franchises, managers. They have vastly different levels of security, even within the same 34 Marriott security brands. Residence in Richmond's way different than Philly. The element in Cape Canaveral is way different than King of Prussia. And so there's no real way to enforce it. But what I can do is provide like a playbook, or like, here's best practices, right? And that's what I was offering them. Like, hey, here's what good looks like. This is how Marriott recommends you do security, but it's an individual sort of franchisee manager situation where they have to implement it. But I'm like, hey, I can at least point out the vulnerabilities, because ultimately this data was going to get compiled in an effort to get funding to actually address this. And Jay literally was the person. So he was the manager of the College Park Marriott when I met him. When this all said and done, he was the head of global security. He pushed, or let's see, he pulled me through Marriott as I pushed him, and it's a partnership to this day that I'm very grateful for. I taught him everything he needed to know about physical security. He helped maneuver and navigate the whole political system of Marriott to the point where he got me in touch with the right people so that I could actually get what I needed. And, when I started to talk to him and the boss, I was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I have a wild idea." And it begins with this. I want Ambassador Elite status. Ambassador Elite, it's a hard thing to get. You normally need to spend $100,000, or sorry, 100, what is it? You need to spend 100 nights per year, $23,000, 10 years in a row. If you miss a year, no, doesn't count. When you have it, though, you get a lot of perks. You get 24-hour check-in, 24-hour checkout. You get concierge. You get, United Silver Premier. You get, and that's another thing. That's a funny thing that I'm going to talk about. They also have a Hertz Gold President Circle perk, where you get enrolled, which I was able to abuse that to get a rental car for free for 323 days last year. I'll talk more about that in a future slide. But you get all these perks, and you get 100% points, which allows you to stack points and, in a way, essentially book rooms legitimately for free. That was goal one. But I needed to get enough points to start out to book nights. The way that Marriott points work are it's essentially 100 points equals $1. And I calculated at the Richmond Marriott, legitimately, to get my room stood up, it'd be about 3 million points for about 60 nights. So I want those in my account starting, and then I want to house a homeless person. And I'm thinking this shit's gonna get shut down, and no, it took them like 13 days. Run with it. And I didn't know which homeless person, but fast forward to literally exactly 1 year after on Pi Day from Buckshot. I go out in the street after I'm armed with this. I meet this guy, Earl Jones. He's right there at the bus stop, and he just stood out to me as a character. He has on his he's a rainbow robe. I don't even remember at this point. Pink platform boots, rainbow robe. He's a character, he's a critter, as I would say. And I'm telling about it, and it's bad when this person's thinking you're crazy, but I'm like, I have this idea, dude. Like, you seem cool. You're on the streets. I want to put you in a hotel, and I think I can prove something interesting. He's like, whatever, Mr. Justin. That's what he says. He's like, you might be on something. What do I have to lose? So, yes. Okay. More about Ambassador Elite, though. Like I said, it provides a pathway. Now, shortly after this time, then I became a actual Marriott employee, because once this pilot was underway and humming, I wanted to get to the underbelly, because I knew for a fact there were issues with the code. And so I was there for 82 days. Within the first week, I found things that I talked about at DEF CON that are unbelievable. that have been abused for many years that I'm not going to put on the record just yet because NDA, but I'll talk to you all individually. And so that's why I became an employee. I became an employee on April 29th. I was a consultant before that, but I wanted to get in and get code access. And big problem with that company, they have 400,000 employees. They've had 22,000 people touch the code base. There's back doors, front doors, this, that, and the other. And I did all this until my last day was on July 19th when the CrowdStrike incident killed all the Windows machines. I went nuts that night because a lot of the key card systems were just completely down, because lack of access control. And then they wanted me to work on endpoints because I'm the only person that knew what was going on. Apparently, I said peace. So I went back to consulting, but I had it when I needed. So Earl Jones. Let's talk more about him. Not James Earl Jones. Rip. So Earl, he had been homeless for 17 years. I guess it would have been 18 this year. And he had been in and out of government housing 8 times. He actually chose to be on the streets. But the situation that kind of, the sort of threefer that happened, like his mom passed away. That's actually the number one cause of homelessness is death of, family passing away. And then the next day, his wife left him for his best friend. And he worked construction in DC and he got a job-related injury, wasn't able to get workers' comp. And so he basically got kicked out of his home. This was back in 2007. So I met him and I was like, and he just was like, what stood out about me? I'm like, I don't know, you seem like an interesting character. It turns out Earl's actually a genius. And so I started talking to him and we just hung out. We just had a bond and a friendship. And I ended up getting him into the presidential suite, which is 1806, because once I had established 404, I do that as a joke, 404 not round, because I'm not an actual official hotel guest. I was in 404 and I quickly got him in 1806 because 1806 at the Richmond Marriott, it's booked 23 days out of the year. The average price per night is $1,200. But what I did, of course, was once I was in my room, I just kept booking it. I booked it with a Marriott card and I kept rebooking 1806, but I wasn't actually getting charged for it. But it literally said I was a guest there. And if you do this, like I said, for 33 days, that's the maximum reservation. It'll eventually fall out of the database so that the front desk can't even book it. So as far as I know, this room's either booked or it's blocked off. It's not available, and they have no clue that anyone's in there. They're not even checking it. Earl was in there the whole time. Granted, he's a homeless dude, so he didn't know how to not be homeless. So he rarely was in that hotel. He would go and eat sometimes. We'd do interviews in the room because I was getting him job interviews. I'd be off to the side, if you can imagine here, we have different angles. Earl's sitting on the chair. I'm feeding him answers to questions because he's a genius, but he doesn't have any experience in tech. But basically, so again, job interviews. He ends up getting a job at Apple on May 27th, May 15th, which is amazing. Less than 2 months. Faked his data. Use a dead person's ID, faked his employment data. Actually, they never even asked for that. That's a crazy thing. Hey, moral qualms aside, this person was dead and his SSN was still working. And Earl had I don't know what it meant for people to have no credit. The government doesn't believe in you if you're homeless. You don't even have an ID. So for the short term, we used it to do I-9 verification. No problem. He got a job. But then he actually was able to establish his own. He got his passport or got his state ID and all of that stuff. But then he ends up getting promoted because, like I said, he's a ninja. He's a senior support engineer. I think he's now making $75K a year for someone to be on the streets for 17 years for to cost the government however much it costs. It's incredible. Then as he's following me around and I'm getting to know him more, I'm like, what do you want, man? He's like, I'd really like to own a home. I'd like to be able to, to have people over and stuff. And so we start looking. I co-signed for him on a home. He's approved for a mortgage. He moves out of the Richmond Marriott, and there's a video of me going down memory lane because it's still emotional to this day. And I'll go back and visit 1806 on December 30th, and he moves into his new home. I can't see on the slide, but January 5th. So in 292 days, he was in the hotel. So that's crazy. Amazing story. With him. But just to kind of poke more around Marriott Bonvoy and what happened during that time, because here's the most incredible part of it all. Earl stayed in that hotel for free, and when he left, he actually walked away with $876.52 based off the value of points that were then converted from Bonvoy. So he made $3 a day by staying in that fancy hotel, eating. Like, if that doesn't completely change your whole perspective of housing and everything wrong, like, I don't know what does. Like, if people with money could solve this problem, it's not about the money, it's the message, as the Joker would say. And so there's a lot of ways without having insider access to abuse these systems, right? That's to get to exploit Bonvoy. For example, you can book. So if you're an elite member with a platinum, titanium, or whatever, you get $1,000 bonus. So if you book individually per day, you'll get $1,000 per day, which is a good thing. There's also, like I alluded to, a lot of hotels that will that will issue you a room, sometimes a mobile key, and give you credit for the night that you did not stay. All you have to do is use a virtual card with privacy.com. Probably 1 out of 10 hotels have that feature. There's also another bug where you can book under the employee code, which is MMP. And let's say here, what was I going to say? Yeah, so you book it under the Explore rate, but the regular rate is like 555. So if you go and there's a difference in points, for example, like the regular rate's 500, there's 166. They'll give you that many points for the regular rate because you come in and negotiate last minute. It's kind of silly. So you book it at the regular rate, you show up and you say, oh, it's actually the Explore rate, or vice versa. They'll give you the multiplier for the regular rate, which is crazy. There's also a lot of point arbitration that can happen. So you can convert like Marriott points to United to Hertz and back, and you get 2x multiplier. Why? Nobody knows. So you can literally just shuffle points around. There's like a whole business of point arbitration that goes on, and all kinds of stuff. There's a lot more ways to just abuse it. Oh, is that what's in the Never mind. Yeah, 404 not fine. Some of these slides are out of order. Here's an example. So you book like the Explore rate. The Explore rate's when you're an employee. It's generally, it depends on the availability, but they'll give you, it's not like 70% off. So, it's a really huge benefit working for Marriott or having a friend or family that can get you in on that deal. Because look at the difference in prices when I was in Prague, 166 versus 584. But like I said, you can book under the expensive rate and then show up and say, it's actually Explore, and they won't reconcile in the database. They'll just give you the points for the original rate. Why? Because hotels are cheap as fuck. And here's the funny thing too, as a result of my work, there's no longer a separate tier for ambassador points. They've converged into titanium. There used to be 100% points. It's 75% because literally what happened was Marriott Finance ran the numbers, and what they determined that if ambassador was titanium, they would have broke even from Earl. So he wouldn't have made money. For them, that's acceptable. To have not lost or not gained money from a homeless person being there, because they felt pretty embarrassed. So if you look at titanium versus ambassador, it's 75% is what you get. The only difference between titanium and ambassador now is you'll get what the hell is it? You'll get Hertz, not President Circle, but gold, and you'll get something. It's very basic. Whatever. It's the same program, but normally, both for ambassador, you only need 75 nights to get there, and titanium 75 nights, ambassador still 100. It's not really worth it anymore because I broke it in half. And then here's kind of how the points arbitration works. Like you can just convert points to airlines to whatever. It's just literally like commodity trading. You can make tons of money like just moving numbers around. So that's a fun way for people that really want to dig into that. Plus, like for me as an insider, I came across a lot of service accounts with millions of points. You can transfer points to other members, all gone. That's one way. Yeah, shoot. And that sort of captures it all, but it's just the beginning, right? Because giving this talk here, giving it to Milwaukee, this started as a proof of concept with no wild end in sight. And now Marriott has said that they're committing to sponsoring this program by the end of Q3 2026. I'll believe it when I see it. But the point is, like Captain America says, like, I'm not asking for permission and I'm past forgiveness, right? You got to do the thing sometimes to shake the foundation of society and push it forward. And it's a wild ride, but thank you Yeah, thank you. And like I said, there's a ton of content on the playlist, and wanted to open up for questions.
Yeah, I think too, some of the biggest things to take away from this too, we talked about prestige going up, security going down. I think that was something that we found consistently throughout this whole thing. And I think there's a line that people don't want to walk with how do you not annoy the guests when it comes to security? How do you not annoy the staff so much when it comes to security? But a lot of these things are something that needs to be addressed. And even things that you would think that would probably be resolved pretty quickly. Like, why wouldn't somebody get an alarm when, a door to a hotel room is left open for some time, things like that could probably be addressed, pretty easily. And a lot of this stuff, or even going up to a maid saying, I haven't checked out yet, or no, I'm staying another night, and how long that'll actually get you, in this whole thing, which is really interesting to see throughout this whole journey. And when it comes to Earl too, the whole story with him was just absolutely, when it came down to it with, his issue with homelessness, when there was just like a simple foundation laid out.
Shit.
Things where all of a sudden, I have a place to take a shower. I have a cell phone where I can take a job interview. I have internet at my house. I think it was just really cool to see that transformation. So this whole story of starting out at something that was a little bit chaotic in the beginning to really transforming someone's life and hopefully tackling a different issue of homelessness. I think this story just had like a profound impact on both of us and hopefully millions of other people. So
yeah, also one little note about Earl, he is now traveling around with Caritas helping homeless people, which is actually pretty amazing. I think, but he's also a critter, so he's really hard to nail down. I think he's in Chicago. I don't know. He actually last summer I started this job, and he actually found me in Chicago, which is the craziest thing. But he's also kind of a ghost. He said something to me a while ago. He's like, you're the first person to ever see me as a person, like on the streets. I don't want to be seen now just because I have a home. So he's a very private person, which seems kind of ironic being out in public, but like, no, it makes total sense. So crazy. But yeah. There's a playlist. So yeah, and a couple other shout outs as well. My titanium turbo princesses. I'm crazy. But there's a couple other devices here too. The Flipper Zero actually is great. That kind of captures all the high and low frequency stuff. And yeah. Wild ride. Questions, concerns, comments, Zach?
Sure. I'm going to stop